Absolutely. I think, first of all, China is looking very carefully at the sanctions being levied at Russia, in particular being torn away from the SWIFT system, seeing Western businesses leaving Russia. And this is going to have a very, very serious impact. We've already seen the devaluation of the ruble. I've spoken to Russian friends. They not only can not use Facebook or Netflix, but five, six Visa cards just really don't work anymore. And prices for medicine have gone up. So this is something substantial. It's affecting the ordinary Russians. The Chinese are looking at this. They're much more integrated into the global economy. And if something similar was to happen, it would be devastating, I think, for the Chinese economy. So China is looking at this very carefully because they don't want this to derail their 40 years of economic development.
And that's a significant point that you make. There has been this huge development. So many millions have been raised out of poverty. Yet at the same time, China has become increasingly assertive and perhaps have had territorial ambitions of their own.
That's a diplomatic way to put it. Of course, in the region, they've been very assertive in the South China Sea, the East China Sea, and of course, belligerents across the Taiwan Straits. What I think is more worrisome is really their position vis-a-vis the Russian invasion of Ukraine. It goes very much against their five peaceful principles of peaceful coexistence that stress sovereignty, that stress the United Nations being the core venue to deal with challenges, international disputes. And right now, China's closest partner, Russia, has invaded another country, and it's put China in a very, very difficult position as being seen as a facilitator of Russian aggression in Eastern Europe.
So what, if any, support might China consider giving Russia? As you say, they are reeling, Russia is reeling from the sanctions. The West is very united against the action that they've taken in Ukraine. What might Russia do? I would say, what might China do?
I think there's a few things that China is thinking about. But first and foremost, it's looking at helping the Russians, but still ensuring that they can remain and have complete access to the global economy. The Chinese want to do business with the United States and Europe. Their economy is dependent on exporting goods to our countries. And if they lose that access, that's it for Chinese economic development. Second, they want to ensure that the technology supply chains remain relatively integrated into the Chinese economy as long as possible. For their development to move to the next stage, they must have access to Western technologies. So aiding Russia really puts them at risk in terms of how they will be able to benefit from interactions with the West and how that will affect their development. So right now, we see the Chinese providing some technical aid. We saw Huawei go in and try to help in terms of dealing with the technological gaps that have emerged because of the sanctions. That will continue. I assume that the Chinese will try to leverage their position now of being really the senior partner in this relationship to get the cheapest resources and energy prices as possible. That's good for the Chinese, not so good for the Russians over the long term. But this will create challenges.
Do you think,
and if the Chinese, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, do you think they would go further and actually provide financial support and even military support?
At this stage, no, because there could be secondary sanctions on Chinese banks, Chinese businesses doing business with Russia. And it goes back to my central point. The legitimacy of the Chinese Communist Party in China is based on this bargain that we will provide economic growth, economic stability, and a tangible improvement in your life, but you need to abide by a one-party system. And if they lose that access, if they lose that economic bargain, this is a real challenge for the legitimacy of the party. And I think that this is not something they want to jeopardize.
You know, we know that they have, in their minds, very clear claim to Taiwan. Would what's happening and the response to Russia give them pause now in terms of pursuing that more vigorously?
Absolutely. I think the Chinese thought that Russia would go into the Ukraine, it would be finished in 3 days, and it would be a fait accompli. And look what's happened. The deterrence capabilities of the Ukraine have been courageous, they have been heroic, and they have been effective. And the Europeans and the United States, Japan, Australia, of course, Canada, they've all come to the aid of Ukraine. And I think that the Chinese are looking at Taiwan through this lens. They're seeing a porcupine strategy develop. I know you don't have porcupines in Australia, but we do in Canada. And, the message is you create enough deterrence capabilities that it hurts, and it hurts a lot in terms of forced reunification with Taiwan. And again, I think this double downs their long-term view that the best way to reunify with Taiwan is through economy, really enhance the economic ties as much as possible, enhance disinformation, and make the Taiwanese really feel that they don't have any other choice. Second, the Chinese are looking at all these economic sanctions, then they know that any kind of forced reunification with Taiwan would the same tactics would be targeted at China.
It is interesting times. Stephen, if there was a stronger Russia-China alliance during this particular conflict, how complicated could it get? How damaging could this be globally if there were?
Well, there's discussions that this is a change in world order, that the authoritarian axis, Russia and China, have come together on the same page of the book, and they want to change international institutions so they're less transparent, so they're less democratic, so they're less rules-based, that they focus on sovereignty. And of course, this would be a challenge for smaller countries like Australia, like Canada, like Japan, that we depend on international law to be the final arbiter of how states behave. And if this system breaks down, it will really create challenges for us in terms of our bilateral relations with these huge states. So in a sense, we're looking at a potential new Cold War or great power rivalry between two authoritarian states and a more open, liberal democratic or conglomeration of states that believe that rules are really important for stability, for how we engage in international relations and how we deal with international disputes.
Stephen, always appreciate your thoughts and analysis. Thanks so much.
Thank you.